Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today, we're taking a look at the novel The Masters of the Pit. It was published by in the Kane of Old Mars. It's the final novel of the three novels that are set on Old Mars, starring Michael Caine. It was written by Michael Moorcock. For folks who are going to be knocking this out, this is my second time I have gone back and read this. He used to be my favorite author in high school, the last 2 years of high school and the first 2 years of college, until I encountered H.P. Lovecraft. He was my favorite author after I started reading his Hawkmoon, that 4-book series set in a future post-apocalyptic fantasy science fiction combination for folks, and it's pretty fun. And it's set in Europe, and it has a lot of fun stuff that's happening in it. So I read those 4 books, I loved them, and then he became my favorite author, and then I started doing a deep dive into his stuff in high school. I picked up this book when I was in college. It's the 9th book in a series that collects all of his things together. I'll link it to you in the comments below. But I actually didn't read it while I was doing a deep dive into it in college until years later, after I was doing another deep dive into his stuff, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, and I liked it and I enjoyed it. So we're going back and we are reading this as a part of these novels that I've been doing a deep dive into in the Eternal Champion series. Now, this character, the Eternal Champion series, is set on different planes of existence. This is set on our Earth, and this guy, this physicist and professor named Michael Caine, who's also great at, he grew up in fencing and was a fencing star and so forth. He is transported in the first novel to Old Mars by basically a matter transmatter, which is basically just like something that would happen in Star Trek, that would transport somebody from one place to the other. For folks, he was the first one to send himself in, because he didn't want to send any of his staff in case something went wrong, although they tried it with animals and stuff, and they all came out safely and such. So he decided to send himself in, and he winds up in Old Mars in the first book in this 3-book series for folks, and now he's going back and forth, and he tells his story to this person for folks. And he goes back in again. Now, the central conflict of the Eternal Champion series is law versus chaos. And the Eternal Champion is fighting the good fight for law against chaos for folks. And that is the central conflict of this entire this multiverse that is created by Michael Moorcock. Actually, this is the first multiversal conflict, and it's the first multiverse story, and he actually created the word multiverse. So that's one of the reasons why I go back and read the stuff, because it's so influential. And he has some science fictions in here, and some fantasy stuff in here too. This is Sword and Planet. It is in the genre that was created by Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars. That was heavily influential, probably about 50 years before this is being written for folks. It's set in the late 60s and 69. I don't remember off the top of my head when it was published, but it was published right around then. Which is pretty cool, because the name of the channel, The Worst Thing About New Books, is a quote by a French philosopher named Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books is that they kept us from reading the old ones. And so again, there's a central conflict between law and chaos, and he's certainly fighting the good fight for law in all 3 of these novels. But it doesn't actually, it's not delined like that is, like it is like in the Quorum series, for example. We went back and read those 6 books, for example. Right, or in the Dorian Hawkmoon stuff, or in the Elric of Anonymity stuff. It's not really delineated as law versus chaos like it is here. So it's the fight's there if you look for it, but it's not listed and so forth. But he's definitely still fighting the good fight for law versus chaos for folks and so forth. This is heavily influential for folks that are happening. For example, in the first role-playing game of all time called Dungeons & Dragons in the mid-70s, their first central alignment system wasn't good versus evil, like J.R. Tolkien. It was actually law versus chaos, and those were all the central conflicts of the original Dungeons & Dragons series. And then an Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was added on top of it, that layered in good versus evil on top of the law versus chaos dynamic and central conflict. for horror folks. So it's heavily influential, for example, on that. In Appendix N, in the first Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Rope DM's Guide in 1979, Gary Gygax, the co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons, said that this was listed as one of the key influences on where he got a lot of his ideas from the series from, for folks. For example, the previous novel has creatures in it that look like the Driders. They're called Spider-Man, but they are described and act like Driders, which are creatures that are brought over from stuff. So there's definitely some influences even in this series, which is less fantasy and more science fiction because it's in the Sword and Planet genre, subgenre of science fiction for folks. But there you are. So I like this. I thought it was fun. It was fast. It was 102 pages long. I read it in 2 days with about 50 pages a day. It's very, very fast. Knocked it out in about 3 hours. Surely you can easily, if you did it in an hour a day instead of my faster read, you could do it in 3 days very, very quickly. So this is a very fast read. That's a lot of Michael Moorcock stuff. A lot of stuff is pretty fast to read. For folks, I liked it. I thought it was a fun ending, but it's probably more like a 7 out of 10. I've given some of his novels higher novels. I've given some of his works lower, but I feel like this is probably more like a 7 out of 10. It's fun. It's a nice version. Again, I'll link you to this series, Kane of Old Mars, for you folks. Masters of the Pit. But I liked it. I thought it was fun. A lot of fun stuff happens in it. Again, to keep my reviews free, so we won't be doing a spoiler review for folks. But there you are. That's my quick review. So there you are. Have you read it? If so, what did you think about it? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button, because there's a lot more of these to come. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it in watching my videos, because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.